What do manufacturing piston rings and baking a cake have in common? And how many times do you fail before you give up? Let's find out. Today we're talking about a dreamer, a man who chased his dreams and ignored conventional thinking. This man was Soichiro Honda, the man who built Honda into the world's largest motorcycle and seventh largest car company in the world. But it wasn't easy. Soichiro failed again and again. This is a story of why you should never give up on your dreams. Our story begins in the early 1900s, a small village near Hamamatsu, Japan. A young boy hears the roar of a motor car. It's something he has never heard or seen before. As it passes, he runs after it and never forgets the smell it leaves behind. The boy is Soichiro Honda. He is the son of Gihei Honda, a blacksmith, who runs a bicycle repair shop. His mother, Mika, is an accomplished weaver who designs her own looms to weave complex patterns. The young boy spends much of his time helping his father in his bicycle shop, kind of like the Wright brothers who invented the plane. He isn't interested in school and he doesn't do well. One time he decides to hide his bad grades from his parents. There's one problem. The report card must be stamped with the family name and returned to the teacher. He solves this problem by making his own stamp from a rubber bicycle pedal cover. It works well. But then he starts making stamps for his classmates too. But he doesn't realize the stamps need to be a mirror image. His family name is symmetrical when written vertically, but often other names are not. So he's discovered by the teacher. His father punishes him, not for making the stamp, but for making it incorrectly. Another time, Soichiro takes one of his father's bicycles and rides 12 miles to the Wachiyama military airfield to watch an aerobatic display. He does not have enough money for the entrance fee, but climbs a nearby tree to watch the plane. Soichiro is an independent thinker and somewhat of a rebel, so he becomes a bit of an outsider at school. But instead of trying to blend in, he embraces his nonconformity. He starts wearing bright colors like red and pink, when all the other boys wear gray or green. Later in the business world, he continues to wear colored shirts to prove the point that inventors have the courage to break away from convention. He doesn't believe in conventional learning. His dream is to make things that are original. This thinking will result in him building the most popular motorcycles in the world. But it will also make his life difficult. There will be much failure and hardship along the way. Now it's 1922 and Soichiro leaves school at 15 years old. He finds an apprenticeship at Art Shogai, an auto repair shop in Tokyo. In the beginning, he cleans, cooks, and babysits. After a year, he's allowed to use a spanner. When the Great Kanto earthquake strikes in 1923, the garage catches fire. Soichiro, who has never driven before, drives 3 cars out of the burning garage. Then he helps rebuild the garage. The company starts manufacturing racing cars. The first model is the Art Daimler, which has a Daimler engine. For the next car, they use a second-hand engine from an American Curtiss A1 biplane. Soichiro is just 17 when he joins the racing crew as a mechanic. The car wins the 5th Japan Motor Car Championship. It's now 1928. Soichiro has finished his apprenticeship and is awarded with the opportunity to manage the Art Shokai branch in Hamamatsu. Now, Soichiro has freedom to follow his dream of inventing things. His repair workshop does more than just repairs. He becomes known as the Edison of Hamamatsu. He makes an automobile stand himself so that workers do not need to crawl underneath the car. It's 1935. There are more than 30 people working at his branch. This includes his new wife, Sachi, who helps with meals and accounts. He is still racing, but has an accident during the opening race at Japan's first racetrack, the Tamagawa Speedway. He hits a car that's leaving the pits and is thrown clear, luckily uninjured. He takes part in another race later that year, but then gives up racing at the request of his wife and father. Sounds like my father. He hated me having a motorcycle. Motor racing dies out anyway during the war with China and the Second World War. He discovers He is colorblind, so it's not called up to be in the military. Maybe another reason the shirts are so loud. Soichiro decides he wants to make piston rings. Having been in the repair business, he knows how often there's a shortage of piston rings. He can't get anyone at the art shogai to support his venture, so he starts a new company, the Tokai Seiku Heavy Industry, and develops piston rings at night. Wonder what he does in the day. He works tirelessly and invests all his savings. He even pawns his wife's jewelry. I wonder what she thought about that. But he encounters many technical challenges. First, he has problems with the molds. Then he casts his first rings and they turn out hard and brittle like granite. Remember we talked about how manufacturing piston rings is a little like baking a cake. You have the ingredients, the flour, the eggs, the sugar, and milk. You mix them all together, but the cake flops. Then it flops again. It could be the order in which you mix them. It could be the temperature of the oven. It could be many things. Wouldn't it just be easier to look at a recipe? Maybe then you'd discover you're missing one small but vital ingredient, baking powder. Making piston rings isn't simple. They have to be done exactly right as they are critical to the engine's power. Let's take a closer look at what a piston ring does in order to understand why. Then we'll find out what ingredient Soichiro is missing. Piston rings are put under a lot of pressure, which is why they have to be strong. They're made from cast iron or steel. They're designed to seal the gap between the piston and the cylinder wall. If the gap is too small, the engine will seize when the things get hot and expand. On the other hand, a large gap means the piston won't seal properly. This will result in reduced engine power. The sliding motion of the rings also causes friction losses. So a good design compromises between minimizing friction while achieving a good seal. So back to the story. Soichiro's piston rings keep cracking and eventually so does he. He doesn't know enough about metallurgy. Just like the baking powder in the cake, the piston rings are lacking a vital ingredient. He needs to add silicone to his recipe. He realizes he needs more knowledge and enrolls in metallurgy class at the technological school at Amamatsu. But once again, he's a poor student. He refuses to take notes or write exams. The principal of the school tells him he will not receive a diploma. But he's not interested in a diploma, only in getting knowledge. Diplomas don't do the work, he says. He's eventually expelled from the university, but gets himself a private tutor so he can chart his own course. Soichiro does things his own way on his own terms. He thinks out of the box long before the term becomes popular in the 1970s and 80s. Nowadays, people are encouraged to think out of the box as it's linked to company success. As we will see, it will play an important part in Honda's success. But back to the story. Soichiro is ready to begin mass production of the piston rings, and he joins Tokai Seiku as president. He has a large order from Toyota. He submits 50 rings for quality checking. Only 3 meet Toyota's rigid quality requirements. Again, he doesn't give up. Within 2 years, he employs more than 2,000 people. He is supplying both Toyota and the Nakajima aircraft. Now it's 1941, and the Pacific War begins. The Ministry of Munitions takes control of the company. Then Toyota takes over 40% of the company's equity, and Soichiro loses his position as president. Things are tough. His workers are leaving to join the military. He replaces them with inexperienced female workers. Soichiro calibrates the machines himself to keep them safe. He also devises a way of automating the production of the piston rings. Then Hamamatsu is completely destroyed in an air raid. The Yamashita plants are destroyed, and an earthquake destroys another plant. Soichiro buys an alcohol tank, which he installs in the yard, and spends the next year playing his shakuhachi, a type of flute, and koto, a harp, and treating his friends to homemade rice whiskey. He spends some time traveling around Japan on a motorcycle that managed to survive the war. It's in 1948. Soichiro Honda is visiting the home of a friend when he happens to see a small generator engine. Thousands of these engines were manufactured during the war to power the wireless radios of the Army. This tiny engine gives Soichiro a big idea. He sells most of what's left of his old piston manufacturing company to Toyota to finance his new idea. But he keeps one of the only buildings left standing and sets up the Honda Technology Research Institute. So what's his idea? Well, he thinks how easy it would be to use these small engines to add some auxiliary power to a bicycle. It's not a new idea. People have been attaching auxiliary power to bicycles for a long time. This was exactly how the first motorcycle was invented way back in 1867 in the United States by a man called Sylvester Howard Roper. The Roper Velocipede was powered by steam. Its inventor sadly died from a heart attack in 1896 in the saddle of his motorcycle while racing. Nobody knows if it was the heart attack that caused him to topple over or the top speed of 40 miles an hour caused him to have a heart attack. Good luck on a modern motorcycle at 200 miles an hour. The first internal combustion petroleum-fueled motorcycle was the Daimler Reitwagen, built by Gottlieb Daimler, the same man who founded Daimler. Many of these brands were being exported to Japan before the war, and there were also Japanese manufacturers in the local market. But things deteriorated in Japan after the war, and bicycles became a common means of transportation. After the war, Fuji brings out the Rabbit 6 months before Vespa is introduced in Italy, and Mitsubishi releases the Silver Pigeon, not the greatest name, but many people can't afford these machines. So while Soichiro's idea is not new, it's more practical for many people. It's something they can afford. He gets working on the prototype. He grafts the generator engine to the bike and uses a hot water bottle he finds in his house as a fuel tank. This 1 horsepower rotary valve 2-stroke 50cc modified engine is the beginning of the Honda Motor Company. It quickly gets nicknamed Chimney thanks to its tall single cylinder and the fact that it also makes a lot of smoke. Fuel is scarce, so Soichiro makes homemade turpentine fuel from tree pulp. This isn't the first time tree fuel is used to power motorcycles, and we know it won't be the last, but it will be another 50 years before anyone looks at the pulp industry as a source of biofuel. Soichiro's wife, Sachi, is the first test pilot. Soichiro wants to see if it's suitable for women. She wears her best manpa, which are baggy trousers, and test drives it around the main streets that are crowded with people. Her manpa gets dirty from oil. Soichiro fixes the problem. Then he buys as many of the small radio generators that he can find. Once stock of the radio engines starts running out, Soichiro decides to develop an original 2-stroke engine of his own design. He could have copied the design of the small radio engine, but Soichiro does not like to copy things. He wants to create original ideas. The fuel tank is cast aluminum in the shape of a teardrop. The idea came from the cast aluminum hot water bottles. This is the first original Honda A-type moped. Take a look at the engine. The brand mark of a figure racing across the heavens is only just visible. Can you make out who the figure is? Maybe Honda's logo from 1948 will give us a clue. Now we can see the winged figure. Over the years, the logo changes, but the wings remain. A reminder that Soichiro was inspired by the goddess Nike, the ancient Greek goddess of victory. In a little over 20 years, a new shoe company in Portland, Oregon, USA, will also choose this goddess for their name. And we all know how it turned out for them. It is something that Honda and Nike have in common. They both found inspiration in the goddess of victory. Now it's August 1949. Soichiro meets Takeo Fujisawa through a mutual acquaintance. They have crossed paths before when Takeo worked at the Nakajima Aircraft Company where Soichiro supplied piston rings. Soichiro is now 42 years old. Takeo, 38. They hit off immediately. Each sees in the other something they themselves don't have. Soichiro does the making. Takeo does the selling. Takeo is a marketing genius. He has a simple principle. Tell customers the truth. They are a perfect combination, and as any car enthusiast knows, the perfect combination can be pretty important. You get the right combination of fuel and air, you get the most powerful result. This is what happens at Honda. The official start date of the company is 1948. Within 11 years, they will become the #1 motorcycle manufacturer in the world. But let's not drive too far ahead. It's still 1949. The D-Type is released. It no longer looks like a bicycle with an auxiliary engine, but is a full-fledged motorcycle. The D stands for dream. Soichiro is always talking about his dream of Honda becoming a world-class manufacturer. So someone starts calling it that, and it sticks. 1 year later, the 4-stroke E-Type marks a turning point for Honda. This is the bike Soichiro always wanted to make. It starts shipping 500 units a month compared to the D-Type, which shipped only about 160 per month at its peak. Then it gets fitted with the third gear and orders rise to 2,000 a month. 3 years later, orders are at 32,000. So how does this company move so fast? Perhaps we can find a clue in the company's slogan, which is 120% quality. The idea is that you aim for 100%, you'll always miss. But if you aim at 120%, you can achieve perfection. It's an idea that is not conventional. Conventional wisdom says 100% is the best you can do. But Soichiro is not conventional. His goal at this point is to exceed international standards. One of the things he does is make a decision to purchase the world's best machine tools. It doesn't make sense at the time because the company is too small. But Soichiro dreams big. How can you exceed international standards without the best tools? He thinks very differently about things. Some companies focus on efficiencies and performance, which works. But Soichiro focuses on joy. Well, I'll tell you the truth, that's how motorcycles are. Oh, he's really into them. It is joy. He writes an essay in the Honda Monthly magazine for his employees. It's called The 3 Joys. Eventually, it will become immortalized as the company's principles. What are the 3 joys? First is the joy of buying. Well, Americans can relate to that one. This means making products that exceed customer expectations. Second is the joy of selling. This means that those who sell or service Honda products have a relationship with customers based on trust. Third is the joy of creating. This is the pride of doing a job well. The one thing Soichiro doesn't find joy in is 2-stroke engines. He finds their high-pitched sound annoying. Remember, he plays the flute and the harp, so sound is very important to him. So when it comes to the next motorcycle, he insists on having a 4-stroke engine. But Takeo is not looking for a larger motorcycle to market. He wants a motorcycle that will have mass appeal both in developed and developing countries. While traveling together in Europe, Takeo looks for ideas for a new bike. Soichiro is more interested in racing at the Isle of Man. Hey, I'd be that way too. They see the popularity of mopeds and lightweight motorcycles, which is exactly what Takeo has in mind. But the motorcycle will be a 50cc motorcycle. Nowhere else in the world is a 50cc being made with a 4-stroke engine. Once again, Soichiro doesn't follow convention. The design is lightweight but has a 4-stroke engine. It's 1958. Honda is one of the leading motorcycle manufacturers in Japan. Now it's time to conquer the world. Soichiro Honda and Takeo Fujisawa sent Kiichiro Kawashima to look for sales opportunities in different parts of the world. Kiichiro has been with Honda for many years. He joined fresh out of the Hamamatsu Institute of Technology and is now a personal friend of Soichiro. When Kiichiro goes to America, he finds it's kind of the land of automobiles. With all its vast distances, Americans need cars. Kiichiro feels it will be a hard market to enter. The motorcycle market is also small in America. Sales are only between 50,000 to 60,000 motorcycles per year. This is only 1/10 of the market in Japan. In Japan, people are riding motorcycles every day and everywhere. They ride them on and off the road to get to work and to the shops. Average Americans don't ride motorcycles. They drive motor cars. The small number of people who do ride large motorcycles of 500 cc's or more. They use them for over-the-road distance drivings where power, size, and speed are vital. Motorcycles also have a negative image in America. This has been influenced by the image of groups like Hell's Angels. Motorcycle shops are dark and greasy and not inviting. Back in Japan, Kiichiro tells Soichiro and Takeo that Honda should begin with Southeast Asia. He thinks it will be very hard to compete in America. Takeo says, let's do America. It's the center of the world's economy. The feeling is, if they succeed in America, they will succeed worldwide. Kiichiro arrives back in Los Angeles later that year, and America Honda opens its doors in September 1959 with a lineup of the Dream, Bentley, and the Super Cub bikes, which did enormously well in Japan. But Kiichiro doesn't have high hopes for the Super Cub in America. The Super Cub is a tiny 50cc scooter. What would Americans even use it for? The team plans to focus on the more powerful motorcycles like Dream and Bentley. There are different stories about why the Honda team in America changed their selling strategy. There are problems with the Dream and the Bentley. Some reports say they aren't handling the tougher conditions or speed down highways. Shipments are returned for problems to be investigated. The team, therefore, has nothing else to sell but the Super Cubs. Another story goes like this. Kiichiro is frustrated with the problems he's experienced. He and the team take their Super Cubs into the hills to let off some steam. Off-roading isn't something people in America are doing back then. Some people see the Honda team and want to try dirt biking too. Word spreads, and soon the Honda team finds they've invented the whole new market in America quite by chance. People start using these small bikes on trails and campgrounds. This pretty much kickstarts dirt bike riding as we know it today. It's likely that both stories are true. Honda continues to focus on selling their smaller motorcycles to the on-road market. To do this, they must transform the image of motorcycles in America completely. They also continue to expand the dirt bike market they created. In the end, Honda does not only introduce dirt biking in America, it also transforms the image of motorcycles in America completely. In just a few years, motorcycles no longer belong to motorcycle gangs and serious bikers, but to everyone. They become part of ordinary American life. You meet the nicest people on a Honda, was their motto. This is how they did it. They run bright, catchy ads that don't even use the word motorcycle. The Super Cub is advertised as nifty, thrifty, Honda 50. Honda staff wear business suits to look professionals. Their own showrooms are spotless, and they encourage dealers to market in a similar way. Then Honda launches another memorable advertising campaign, created by their agency, Gray Advertising. You meet the nicest people on a Honda. Shuichiro Honda doesn't like convention. One of the films begins with the words, "You can be conventional and use four wheels." Then it shows how you can try something different. Avoid traffic, avoid uphills on a bicycle, and save money on a Honda. Gray Advertising convinces them to sponsor the Academy Awards. Honda is the first foreign corporation to do so. This is also unconventional and becomes a topic of conversation. The idea that nice people can ride motorcycle catches on. Sales of the Super Cub, or Honda 50 as it's known in the U.S., take off. It has broad appeal. It's small and easy to ride with a quiet 4-stroke engine. Not a smelly, loud 2-stroke. It appeals to men and women and becomes popular with students. It has a wide step which stops the wind lifting up a woman's skirt. Price is $250. It's reasonable and 75% less than Harley-Davidson. By the end of 1962, America Honda is selling 40,000 motorcycles a year. Kiichiro also arranges to have the Super Cubs sold in sports goods stores and camping stores. Honda starts manufacturing motorcycles especially for dirt bike racing. They make suspension stronger and increase traction with larger tires. Competitors quickly follow, keen to get on the action too, but Honda keeps moving ahead. Ever wondered what the difference is between a motorcycle and a motorbike? Why do we call it a dirt bike riding and not dirt cycle riding? A common myth is that a motorbike is less powerful than a motorcycle, but actually the two are completely interchangeable. The word motorbike came a lot later and grew popular in the 1950s when people preferred fewer formal words. But it never really caught on, especially in America. It's used in the UK and Australia. In America, motorbike is associated with smaller kids' bikes. Everything's opposite in England anyway. They call public schools, and private schools, public schools. Motorbikes, motorcycles, everything's backwards there. But back to Honda, who by 1964 has become the world's largest manufacturer of motorcycles. It didn't take them long. This brings us to the next chapter in the Honda story. It's finally time for Shuichiro's dream of making cars to become a reality too. Turns out that this is already happening. Honda's first automobile is the T360 mini pickup truck. It's 3 months later and the X500 sports car is released. It has chain-driven rear wheels that show its motorcycle origins. It's based on the S360 Roadster, which, though developed for sale in 1962, was never produced. Now it's 1969. The N600 model is launched. Honda uses its established dealerships to sell. In the beginning, the four-wheel N600 is displayed amongst the motorcycles. The cars don't have the same logo as the motorcycles. The logo is simply H for Honda. Not much is known about the origins of the logo we know today. It was created somewhere towards the end of the 20th century. Some say the H is broader at the top to symbolize reaching for one's dreams. You could also imagine two wings if you're really imaginative. And if you're even more imaginative, you can see the wings closing in to form the A logo of Acura, Honda's luxury brand in the US. The official story is that it's just an H for Honda. Some people wonder if Hyundai copied Honda's logo. The answer is no. Hyundai is a Korean word that means modern. The H not only represents the company name, but also the customer and company shaking hands. The oval represents global expansion. Yeah, well, if you ask me, it really looks a lot like Honda. That's their take, not mine. But this story is not about Hyundai, so let's get back to Honda. It's 1964. The Honda RA271 is Japan's first Formula One race car. It debuts at the German Grand Prix. The following year, it wins in Mexico. Soichiro and Takeo retire together in 1973. Soichiro stays on as director and is appointed supreme advisor in 1983. People magazine dubs him the Japanese Henry Ford. It's now 1974. The Honda Civic is launched with its groundbreaking CVCC engine. It's the first vehicle to meet emissions in the U.S. Clean Air Act, and it does it without a catalytic converter. The marketing anthem is, "Leave blue skies for our children." 2 years later, the Accord arrives. It starts as a humble hatchback, but it's a big hit. It's one of the best-selling passenger cars in America. And after a few years, Honda develops the world's first car navigation system. While this is happening, both Soichiro and his wife, Sachi, enjoy skiing, racing cars, hang gliding, and even ballooning at the age of 77. They both agreed that their sons should not join the company. Soichiro Honda dies in August 1991. He's posthumously appointed the Order of the Rising Sun and inducted into the Automobile Hall of Fame near Detroit. Over the next 20 years, the Honda Aircraft Company is established and the first Honda jet takes to the skies. Honda launches the first hybrid car available in North America. If you've watched our video on Toyota, you'll know that Prius launches 7 months later, but overtakes the Insight in sales because it has 4 doors. Then FCX Clarity fuel cell vehicles introduced the world's first fuel cell sedan. What began as a bicycle with an auxiliary motor used to generate wireless radios has become the world's leading motorcycle manufacturer and one of the world's leading car brands. Soichiro Honda was a man who believed in the unconventional and in the power of dreams. The man may be gone, but his dream continues.